Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining me today to go over the basics of managing debt. My name is Cassandra Dorn, and I'm a certified financial planner with Provident Financial Consultants based out of Oshkosh, Wisconsin. We here at Provident Financial Consultants believe education is extremely important when it comes to managing finances and understanding your financial future. So, with that being said, let's dive right into things. So, one of the first questions I ask people that I work with is, do you have a credit card? And if they answer yes, I then follow up with the next question of, do you carry a balance on that credit card from month to month? I also ask if they own more than one credit card. What about a car loan? Most Americans have loans. This is pretty common for me to hear yes to some of these questions. And many college students typically graduate owing tens of thousands of dollars in student debt. For most people, debt can make it hard to focus on everyday living and can add a level of mental stress on how to manage their personal expenses, paying their bills, and on top of that, adding to savings for retirement or other financial goals. But as stressful as debt can be, some debt can be a smart financial tool. So, as we dive into managing debt, let's get started with two key things to consider when deciding whether or not you should take out debt. The first thing you need to determine is how much debt can you really afford to take on? You must know how much income comes into your household on a month to month basis. Then, from that amount, you should deduct all regular bills and necessities. So, heat, water, groceries. And when you come to that final number and you're considering taking on debt, you need to make sure not to sign on for a monthly debt payment greater than that surplus amount. In addition, we always discuss the emergency savings account. Within this account, you should keep about 3 to 6 months of expenses just sitting there in case of an emergency. Like last year when the pandemic hit, and a lot of people found themselves without a job because their company shut down. And without a job, there is no paycheck. And so we need a savings account that is deemed emergency funds to help cover that amount. So now that we determined that it's possible to take on some debt, when is it okay to take on debt? What is considered good debt versus bad debt? Bad debt would be considered anything with high interest rate associated with that. A common source of bad debt is credit card debt, where you carry debt on that credit card from month to month, sometimes only meeting the minimal payments. I have seen credit card debt ranging from 15% a month to 26% a month, if not higher. It is very hard to get out from under that debt when interest rates are so high. Another form of bad debt is simply using or taking out debt to buy something that you really don't need or is unlikely to retain value over time. Some people find that areas of focus in this is technology. Now, I can argue with that, saying, yes, absolutely. Sometimes we have to take out some debt for the laptop for our job. But to get a new smartphone every time one is available, when maybe it's not a necessity, could be determined as bad debt. Let's talk about good debt, though. Good debt carries low interest. For example, since the pandemic, I've been seeing a lot of advertisements for cars and buying cars. And one of the biggest headlines is 60 months, 0% interest. That would be considered debt that could be necessary and is offered at a low interest rate. It is something to consider if you need a car and if you can afford to take on those payments because they carry such a low interest rate. Also, good debt is something that is likely to appreciate in value or could help improve your financial decision. A lot of people view a home purchase as good debt. You are building equity within that home. it is most of the time useful to take out a loan to get your home. Not a lot of people have over $100,000 just laying around for a home purchase. So we see it's very common for people to have mortgages, especially when they're first starting out. So again, taking on debt to buy a house or maybe even to go back to school or purchase a car are some ways to work ahead, especially if that car gets you to work or if that degree gets you the job or the position or the promotion that you're working towards. Like my mother always says, they can never take that degree away from you, even if you have student debt on it. So now that we've talked about good debt versus bad debt, let's talk a little bit more on okay to take on debt for a purchase. Again, like I said in the previous slide, if you can handle the monthly payments, that is a very, very, very important thing to consider. Even if it's good debt, like a home or a car, if you cannot afford to take on those monthly payments, it should not be done. You also need to consider the interest rates as well as could this improve your financial position in the future? Meaning, will it appreciate in value or will it get you further ahead within your career? You should also make sure, again, that you have that emergency fund in place. That is very important. And again, that hit home during the pandemic when people found themselves without jobs and needing some savings to pay for their rent, their mortgage, or just basic groceries. When you're going to take on a debt, remember interest rate is extremely important as well as the length of the term. If you're going to buy a car, you need to remember there are several different terms and how long are you going to keep this car? Some car loans go out over 6 years, some are 2 years. Those will impact that amount of monthly payment, and you also need to consider how long are you keeping this car around. Now let's look at managing credit card debt wisely. A few slides ago, I did say that it could be considered a bad debt. Now I'll be honest, I have a credit card and I do put some expenses on that credit card. The most important thing to take a look at when using credit cards is to one, make sure you can afford to pay off those credit cards every month. You also need to research the options of what credit card you're going to take out before you utilize said credit card. Some credit cards offer rewards, and you need to see which rewards fit your lifestyle. Others offer some credit monitoring services or identity theft. That could be important to you as well, but those are not a sound reason just to take out a credit card. Also, keep in mind when you're putting expenses on your credit card that it should not exceed more than 25% of your credit limit. I did touch on rewards. That bullet point is hitting home. Don't use rewards as an excuse to buy more things that you don't need, justifying it to get those extra points, those extra airline miles. If you don't need it, you shouldn't buy it, especially on credit. The last item to consider is making large purchases. A lot of times, when you make a large purchase, you should not put it on a credit card unless you can pay off that balance quickly because those interest rates are usually very high and it snowballs quickly, which can make it very hard to pay off and it can add a lot of undue stress to day-to-day living. So again, when using credit cards, let's develop good habits. Let's always keep this in mind. Make sure to review your statements regularly and keep your purchases in check. This may seem like a minor thing to do, but every once in a while, I have noticed errors on my statement, or maybe I've been double charged for things, or I don't remember making that purchase. So I sit down and I review my statements every month prior to paying my bill. And speaking of paying my bill, I pay it on time because I do not like paying those late charges. That's $25 out of my pocket on top of interest if I don't pay it on time. I'd rather spend that $25 elsewhere. So I'm always prompt on making sure my bill is paid every month. Again, it's important to stress paying off the balance in full every month is extremely important because of those high interest rates. You also need to keep an eye on your credit limit. You may be tempted to overspend, but that could impact your credit score, making it harder to get loans in the future when you may truly need them, like to buy a house. While taking advantage of the rewards program is always a fun consideration, again, just remember don't buy something to get extra rewards. If you don't need it, don't buy it. And again, make sure to review your credit card every month to protect yourself against fraud. My mother actually had a random charge of $10 at a gas station in a different state on her credit card. They were testing it. It was caught right away and resolved, and no harm was done. But again, it is very important to keep your eye on your credit card and what is being charged to make sure it is done by you and not fraudulent activity. So, if we find ourselves in some excessive credit card debt or just debt in general, let's talk about ways to pay off that debt and what strategies we can employ so we don't feel so stressed and we can start getting ahead on these payments. So, two strategies considered is the snowball effect and the avalanche method. Let's first go into the snowball effect. I personally like this process because I am a list maker and a list cross offer, if that's how you would deem it. So I would make a list of all of the loans that I have outstanding, and I would look at the loan with the lowest balance first, and I would work on paying off that balance. Once that balance is paid off, I cross that off my list and I get a little hint of satisfaction. One down, a couple more to go. Then I would take that payment that I was making towards that smaller balance and I would add it on to my second smallest balance. And I would work on paying off that loan. Once that loan is done, cross that off the list and take that payment and put it on my next loan and keep going in that order until all of my loans are paid off. To me, this is very satisfying because, again, you're able to cross things off, sometimes quick, and you're taking those payments that you're putting on your loans and doubling up more or less on the loans remaining, which helps pay them off faster. The other way that we can look at to pay down credit card is the avalanche method. This is where you focus on paying off the debt with the highest interest rate first. This allows you to pay less over time in interest and allows you to pay down debt overall faster. The thing that I don't do, or the reason why I don't use this method is again, I get satisfaction from crossing things off the list. And sometimes I personally could get frustrated because I'm paying off the highest interest rate, which could be my highest balance, which would take me the longest. And I could get frustrated with the process. But this is an absolutely acceptable process to do. It works well for a lot of people. And sometimes with credit cards versus, let's say, a car loan, you want to pay off that credit card first, anyways. And hopefully, your credit card's a little lower balance than your car. So, again, it's a great method. It's just an alternative to the snowball method, which I personally prefer. Now, some tips on managing our credit cards and our credit in general is the credit score. The importance of maintaining a good credit score, I cannot express enough. The credit score affects your life in more ways than you know, and it's really important to monitor that number. A lower score can keep you from qualifying for a mortgage. It can also mean that you are going to pay higher interest rates because your score is not as high as the bank would like it. So, where do we get this information? Where do we find our credit scores? Well, there are three major credit bureaus in the United States. They are Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax. Your credit score is reported at all three, and it may vary between all three. Credit scores are three-digit numbers that can range from a low of 300 to a high of 850. In general, we deem a score of 720 or higher as excellent. And while the scores again may vary by credit bureau, They are mainly calculated based on these five factors. The first is your payment history. Again, when I stress the importance of making those monthly payments on time because it costs me money and possibly interest rate, well, it can also affect my credit score. I need to make sure my bills are paid on time. And if they aren't, my credit score could be lowered. The second thing to consider is the total outstanding debt and how much I owe. To maintain a good credit score, I have to make sure my overall loan balance is no more than 25% of my available credit. So if I have a credit limit of $10,000 on a credit card, I need to make sure that I don't charge more than 2,500 on average per month on that account. The credit types are also important to consider. Again, that good debt versus bad debt. For example, a mortgage, a car loan, when successfully managed, can help improve your credit score when you're making timely payments on them. Lenders, lenders will consider you experienced if you have these loans and maintain these loans. However, if you carry credit card debt, you could be considered an inexperienced lender or borrower with a lower score. They also look at the length of your credit history. And this is simply how long have you had credit? The longer the track record that they can follow of your on time payments, the better your credit score is going to be. And last but not least, they also consider credit applications history. This is the number of times you've tried to get credit, whether you were successful or not. You should avoid opening several new accounts to take advantage of special offers, such as airline miles or cash back on purchases. Having too much credit capacity can actually make you more of a credit risk and lower your overall score. It takes a lot of time and discipline to improve your credit score. And like I said, it can be frustrating and take several years. But believe me when I say it's worth it. By paying attention to the five components of your credit scores, managing your credit responsibility, and maintaining ideal debt management, you can improve your overall financial health as well as your credit score. So, how can financial professionals help? Well, first, we can work on guidance and advice on budgeting, debt management, and other key financial goals. A lot of times when I talk to people who are asking for help, I give them a budget and ask them to fill it out. I also ask them to research what loans they have, what balances they carry, what interest rates they have, and the terms of all these payments. A lot of times they may not know. So it's just itemizing and putting all of this down on paper to establish a plan. And that's where you can get some one on one advice that focuses on your unique needs and your preferences. Like I said, when it came to paying off debt, I know my preference is Snowball, not Avalanche, but I have worked with people that prefer the Avalanche method. So again, it's just sitting down and taking the time to go through all of this and deciding what is going to work for you and your situation. Thanks for tuning in today. I hope you found some pieces of information that are helpful to you in your unique situation that you can start implementing today. Have a great rest of your day, and we look forward to seeing you again next month.